Welcome back, everybody, to the latest edition of the Future So Right podcast. I'm your host, Pete Beal, and this is a Green Flame Press production. Welcome back. We are back with another episode. Excited to be back at the microphone recording this one. I did a bit of a poll on my Instagram a few months back when I was sort of conceiving this series of publishing episodes. If you're just tuning in for the first time, the idea is that I discuss a little bit of the publishing process that I'm currently going through with my debut novel. Hopefully you'll be able to glean some, I won't go so far as to say wisdom, but hopefully glean something helpful from these discussions. So when I put this out there and I asked for suggestions for episodes from the writing community, the one that came up the most is the one we're going to talk about today, and that's marketing and promoting yourself and your work. So I'm going to come clean right away and admit that I don't consider myself to be an expert on this topic. However, it's something I've been working on for quite some time. I actually delayed this episode by 2 weeks so I could hopefully have even more information to share with you. So tonight we're going to talk about marketing and promotion, some things that I've done, some things that you'll want to consider when plotting out your own strategy, what's worked for me, what hasn't worked for me, and the various options that are out there. If you haven't caught the last episode yet on common mistakes that authors make, particularly first-timers, I'm going to leave that in the pinned comment down below. Otherwise, if you enjoy the content today, please make sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you want to hear more. Otherwise, let's dive right into the topic at hand. I hope you enjoy the show. The first piece of advice that I would offer anyone who came to me and asked me for what my recommendations would be for book marketing would be to start early. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about paid ads here. I'm talking about things like establishing an official author website. I'm talking about things like establishing your social media platforms. Ideally, you'll begin doing these types of things at least a year before your first novel ever comes out. Well, a year, that seems pretty early, right? Well, why do we want to start this early? Simply put, it takes time to build up a following. The more people that you can get interested in your content on other platforms, be that your website or your social media platforms, the more people that are going to be interested in potentially buying your book when the time comes. So my personal recommendation, get an official author website going and get at least 2 social media platforms going. Start building that interest early. Get people invested in your journey. Talk a bit about the struggles you have with the process, the small victories you have throughout the process. Get them invested in you and therefore invested in your story as well. Now, I will be fully transparent here and say that a large following does not necessarily equal a large number of purchases. This is true. But I can also pretty much guarantee that a small following is pretty much going to guarantee a small number of sales. In addition to the official website and the social media platforms, I would also recommend looking into signing up for the Goodreads author program when you can. This is essentially the profile that you'll use on Goodreads, where pretty much anyone can go out and review your book. A lot of people have had complaints about Goodreads over the years, and frankly, some of them are valid, but it's also a very large network of authors and readers, and it's another good way you can potentially get your book out there in front of more eyes. So I think it would potentially be a wasted resource if you didn't take advantage of it. I think I could help you determine whether or not it's time to start marketing and promoting yourself and your work yet. Are you currently writing a story with the intention of publishing it and ideally making some money off of it? If you answered yes to that question, it's not too early to get started with marketing and promotion. Honestly, I think it's wise to start early, start in baby steps. This way it's not such an overwhelming process to go through when the time comes to promote your book at the time of release. Think about it, you're going to release your book a month from now and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to get a website up, I have to get social media going. It's going to be a time crunch. So I can't really stress it enough, the importance of getting started early. And the great thing about these early parts of the process is they can be done either for free or for very low cost, such as starting your website. You'll probably have to pay a little bit of money for that, but I addressed that in my episode on the costs of self-publishing a novel in this publishing series. So you can check that out if you're more interested in learning more about that. The rest of what I just said, pretty much completely free. Another step that I would recommend any author take early in the process is to do a little bit of studying on what the most popular books in their genre are. So take a look at these books and try to categorize them a little bit and try to figure out what is helping them sell particularly well. Now, obviously, every book is different, but you're going to find certain similarities between your book and most popular books in your genre, including ways that you could potentially advertise your book. So what do I mean by studying these books? Well, there are a few different things you'll want to look at. Ideally, you'll want to read a few of these books. But beyond that, one thing that I find helpful is to look at the reviews on these books. As you're reading through the positive reviews, are you seeing words or phrases mentioned that you think, oh, that could apply to my book? If so, I would recommend maybe keep a notepad or something along those lines, or a file on your laptop. Just kind of try to start keeping a list of these types of things, because when the time comes that you are ready to start advertising, these are keywords and things like this that you can use to target your advertising towards a selected audience who would be more inclined to purchase your book. Think of it this way. Let's use Harry Potter as an example. Let's say you're writing a book in the same genre, and obviously you're not ripping off Harry Potter or anything, but it has certain similar qualities to it. So you read the reviews on the Harry Potter books and you find certain keywords like magic, wizardry, wizard school, things like this. By using these in your own advertising campaign, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in depth later on, what happens is when fans of Harry Potter go out and start searching for new books, you're maximizing the opportunity that they could potentially run into your book. They can't buy your book if they don't see your book and they don't know it exists, right? So this is a step you're taking to give your book the best chance of ending up in front of the right eyes. There's another thing you could learn from studying popular books in your genre, and even more so from reading your own book, and a certain amount of critical thinking is involved here. Identify who your target audience is going to be. Now, ideally, in a perfect world, everyone in the world is going to want to buy your book, right? Unfortunately, this isn't usually how it works out. Different books are going to do better in different demographics. Some books might sell better among men, some might sell better among women. Some might sell better in a certain age group than others, or among a certain ethnicity than others. So you need to take a critical look at your own work. And beyond looking at genre, popular books in your genre, look at popular books that sell in that particular demographic. This is another place to search for keywords. By identifying your target audience early, you're setting yourself up for future success. So before we dive into the paid advertising platforms, aka the reason you probably clicked on this video, I just wanted to touch on a few sort of quick hitters. There are a few things that are essential to marketing your book that you need to have regardless of what marketing or promotion you elect to do. One of these is a book blurb, aka that little description on the back of the book. An enticing book blurb is one of the best things you can have for effective advertising. Another thing I will mention is having a good cover. Don't judge a book by cover, they say, because everyone does it. Having a good, clean, professional-looking cover and an enticing book blurb are going to help tremendously when we come to the part of the podcast where we discuss paid advertising. It doesn't matter really how much money you throw into advertising. If your book, the appearance, and the description don't draw in an audience, it's all going to be for naught. So now that we've discussed some of the simpler things we can do and some of the free things we can do, let's get a bit into the paid advertisement part of the discussion. Now, one of the first things that pops into people's minds when they think about advertising, and I think this is most likely because they've seen advertising on these platforms, is social media. I'm talking about ads on places like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Basically any of those social media platforms you can think of that are designed to get your book in front of an audience. Can these be effective? Well, I think the answer is really going to depend on you, your book, and your book's target audience. Remember, we discussed the importance of identifying the target audience earlier. So, for example, would a young adult-themed book targeted towards maybe people in the 13 to 18-year-old range do particularly well with a Facebook ad campaign? Not necessarily, because this age group really isn't on Facebook as much as the previous generations were. Now, if your book is targeting more of a middle-aged demographic, then this could potentially be a very valuable tool for you. I remember when I first started this podcast, I actually ran some targeted advertisements through Facebook. And what was nice about this was I was able to set my own budget, so I didn't have to spend a lot of money to get advertisements out there. So what sort of results did I get? Well, it's a bit complicated. The videos where I ran advertisements, the podcast episodes, have a lot more views than those that do not. However, when I really dive into the analytics of these videos through YouTube, what I found was most of those extra clicks did not spend a lot of time actually listening to the podcast. Most of my longer listeners, the people who actually sit there and listen to a larger portion of the episode, come through the advertisement I do say on my Instagram page that I make to the writing community, etc. So while I can rack up a decent chunk of views, most of those, to be honest, click off of the podcast within the first minute. So how much value is that really bringing? So in the end, I decided, even though I wasn't really spending a particularly large amount of money on this, it really wasn't worth the financial investment to continue doing it. I think it's really the same when advertising on any social media platform. It's so important to know your target audience and to understand the demographic that uses each particular social media platform. It's going to help you get your ad to the right eyes. Running the same exact ad essentially on Facebook and the same exact ad on Instagram or TikTok or whatever other platform you choose are going to yield very different results. You could essentially use the same verbiage, the same image of your book, and the results are going to be completely different because you need to understand you're advertising to two completely different groups of people. So which one is going to be more interested and more likely to purchase your product? That's where your market research that we talked about earlier really comes in. Now, another really common way to advertise books involves Amazon. And this is the method that I have used most extensively when it comes to marketing my upcoming release. So Amazon offers a variety of different advertising options for authors. So for Amazon.com, and that's specifically US Amazon, I have not yet run ad campaigns on international Amazon yet. However, I am currently looking into that. There are several different what's known as campaign types that you can run. And what I use, and I think what the most common campaign type used is what's called a sponsored product campaign. So the description of this from Amazon's own site is that you're promoting products to shoppers actively searching within related keywords or viewing similar products on Amazon. So if a shopper is browsing books that are potentially similar to yours, they might see an ad for your product. So I decided to give this a try because I've heard really good things. Now I ran 2 different campaigns over the past month and a half or so. The first one that I ran, I use what's called automatic targeting on Amazon, which is essentially Amazon analyzes my product, my book, and determines the best way to target that to an audience. And the nice thing about this type of advertising is that you can set a budget. A daily budget is what most people do, and you're only actually charged if shoppers actually click on the ad. So I'm going to pull up this first campaign. Let's take a look at it. So again, I used automatic targeting, which means I allowed Amazon to select essentially the keywords. It selects what type of products people are looking at when they see this ad. I ran this for 10 days with a $5 daily budget. A total of 448 people saw this ad over those 10 days. Not a single one of them clicked on it. So the one good thing about this is that I ended up not spending a single penny on this advertisement. Obviously, the bad news is that nobody clicked on my ad, and obviously, therefore, nobody bought my book. So why could this be? Now, I don't know this for sure, but I believe this is related to the fact that I used automatic targeting on this ad. And I did this specifically for the purpose of this podcast. I wanted to see what sort of results I got. If I had to theorize, I would guess that Amazon was not targeting the correct demographic for my particular book. So I decided to run a second advertisement in which I would manually target the advertising. So we're going to pull that one up next. Okay. So this one I ran a full 2 weeks. Same budget, $5 daily. The budgets, I'll let you look into this yourself a little bit in terms of figuring out exactly how they work. Essentially, you set a daily budget and it won't go above that unless you select to allow it to go above that. You get suggestions while you're placing the ad on what they recommend for the daily spend, what they recommend the spend per click is, etc. Now, so what I did was I manually targeted this advertisement, which means I selected my own keywords. So what I mean by that is people searching for certain keywords had a higher probability of seeing my advertisement. So for keywords, I selected things like authors' names who have a similar style to mine, books that are of a similar style to mine, various words related to my genre of epic fantasy, things like this. So again, the prior automatic advertisement ran for 10 days and didn't get a single click. Okay. It was viewed 448 times, the prior advertisement that was automatically targeted. This one, which I manually targeted, was viewed 12,507 times. So obviously, it was 4 days longer, but that's still a world of difference. Let's do a little math. What did I say? 448 was the views on the last one, I think. So that averages out to about 44.8 views per day. Now this one averages out to almost 900 views per day. So almost 20 times as many people are seeing this one, which I did the manual targeting for. Now this one actually did get clicks. I ended up spending, I had set a total budget of, it was a $5 daily budget. So that would have been a maximum of $70. I ended up spending $9.38. Now the cost per click can vary slightly based on these algorithms that Amazon uses. I'm not going to dive into this too deeply because honestly, I don't have a great understanding of it myself. So people actually clicked on the advertisement. Did this generate any actual sales? I'm pleased to announce that it did. It generated a grand total, drum roll, hold on, of 1 sale. So, all right, do the math here. I charge $3.99 for my book, and I spent $9.38 on my advertisement. Obviously, I'm not making $3.99 off this book, so I'm probably losing about $7, give or take. So, on the surface, that can sound like a bad thing, right? And I can understand why. But what you need to keep in mind is, especially with your first book, you're really trying to start building that initial group of your core audience. Ideally, you're going to be releasing more than one book, correct? So, I made 1 sale off this ad campaign. Now, ideally, this person is going to get my book, they're going to read my book, and they're going to love my book. They're going to go out, they're going to tell their friends, they're going to write positive reviews, and most importantly, when I release the next book, they're going to go out and buy that one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Now, obviously, none of this is guaranteed, but this is what you're aiming for. Understand that with your first book, there's a very real possibility that you're not going to be profitable. With your second book, with your third book, it's still possible that you're not going to be profitable. What most successful authors do is release lots of books. They build a dedicated following of readers so that over time, the amount of money they need to spend on advertising shrinks while the number of sales continues to increase due to that faithful following. So when it comes to the Amazon ads, this is my final thoughts on them. If you're going to do it, do the targeting yourself and do it using the research we talked about earlier in the episode. Do it with an understanding that it might generate no sales or it might generate very few sales. But if it generates very few sales, those are still potentially future sales, assuming you've targeted the right audience. Always keep in mind that you set your own budget, you set what you're comfortable with. Amazon is going to give you suggestions. I suggest you follow them in terms of how much you spend per day. But you don't have to. Just understand that the larger of a daily budget you can provide, the more impressions you're going to get, the more potential sales are going to come into your pocket. There are other types of ads on Amazon. Another popular one is what's called a lock screen ad. And what this is basically an ad that people see when they go to unlock their Kindle or their Fire tablet. I didn't run one of these simply because there's a minimum spend that I wasn't comfortable with. I believe it's $100. And since I don't know how it works exactly, I didn't really want to spend that much money on it. But it's an option you can research. You can also advertise yourself as a brand, particularly if you have 3 or more products. So this would be for somebody that has multiple books out. Obviously, I don't fall into this category, so I was not able to play around with this type of advertising. But if you fall into this category, do your research, check it out, see if it's for you. One other thing I'll mention with Amazon is you can nominate your ebook for a Kindle deal and Prime Reading promotions. Just note that nominating your book doesn't guarantee enrollment. I nominated mine. It has not yet been selected, but it's something I would just throw it out there, just see if you end up getting put on a Kindle deal. You know, get it in front of more eyes. But just keep in mind, it's not guaranteed. There's also the KDP Select program through Amazon. I didn't enroll in this because I elected to go with a wider release for my book. I didn't want to be KDP exclusive. I have heard of authors having great success with the KDP program. I've also heard of some that have been underwhelmed with it. So, again, this is your market research. Look into it. Know that it's an option. Know that it's out there. And you make the determination on if it's best for you. What my strategy was get my book as wide of a release as possible and in front of as many eyes as possible. I didn't go Amazon exclusive because I understand there are a lot of people that don't like using Amazon out there. They look for alternatives, and I don't want to alienate those potential readers by only offering my work on Amazon. So for me, KDP Select wasn't an option. For you, it might be a great option. That's for you to decide. Another thing I want to touch on real quick with the KDP advertising is when you do a manual targeted ad like I did, and I'm still learning the ropes of this, but what you can do once the ad ends, or even when the ad's running, is you can look at your targeting that you've done, and you can actually, it'll break down if there was a certain keyword that generated clicks or orders. So I can actually view the list of chosen keywords that I had selected, and I can see how many clicks were generated by it, and I can see how many sales were generated by it. So I can potentially look and see, you know, is this keyword just not generating interest? Maybe I remove it next time, replace it with something else. So make sure you're looking into, if you do run these, diving a little bit deeper. Another cool one is search terms you can look at, so you can see what the shopper actually searched for, and then how many clicks ended up on your ad as a result of those search terms. That's kind of cool. So I could see that 8 of my selected keywords actually generated clicks on my ad. There were, it was mainly one keyword, it looks like, so I'll definitely run with this one again, that generated a lot of interest and actually generated my only sale. So make sure you're really doing your market research in terms of those keywords. What is having a lot of success right now that's really similar to your book? And make sure you're getting those keywords into your advertisements rather, so that it's getting in front of the right people. You know, if you're writing, for example, let's see, what should I say here? Maybe you're writing a work of religious fiction. Maybe using keywords like 50 Shades of Grey probably wouldn't be the best strategy for you, right? And vice versa. So, things to keep in mind. But I really do appreciate the metrics that KDP does give you for measuring exactly how your keywords are performing and what's generating interest and what isn't. There's a lot of tools here. I could spend all day talking about them. There's a lot of helpful YouTube videos and blogs that specifically go into KDP advertising. I would highly recommend you check them out. One last option I want to mention, I ended up not going this route for very specific reasons. So I can't comment too much about it, but it's out there and I feel I should mention it. You could potentially hire an outside person or agency to promote and market your book for you. I will warn you that based on the research I've done, these services tend to be on the pricey side. And understand there are no guarantees. This is something you might dump a lot of money into to get limited or even no results. Ultimately, nobody's going to want to put in the work for your book more than you will. So all I would say, if you do elect to go in this direction, I can't really give you any advice other than make sure you know what you're paying for and go in with realistic expectations. Even if you do go this route, it's highly unlikely they're going to take your debut novel and turn it into a bestseller overnight. So moving into sort of the last area that we're going to discuss, it concerns book reviews. And honestly, there aren't many things that are going to help propel your book better than book reviews are. I'm sure we've all heard the statistics by now. If you can manage to get your book to 50 reviews on Amazon, you're going to get a lot more exposure. So how do we go about getting book reviews? And for a debut novel, it can be tricky. Obviously, you can reach out to people, say, there are a lot of people here on YouTube that do book reviews online. You can reach out to those people, but understand that they get a lot of requests, and they might not even respond to you or have the time to review your book. So one of the most common things that people do is they recruit what's called ARC reviewers, and ARC stands for, it's ARC, stands for Advanced Reader Copy. So essentially what you're doing is you're reaching out to readers who ideally will typically read in your genre to read your book. You give them this book for free, and in return they agree to write a review for you. Ideally they will publish this review, say on Amazon, on Goodreads. If they have a blog or something like that, they'll publish the review out there, recommend it to people they know. Now, ideally, they'll like your book, but you have to understand going in, there's certainly a possibility that they won't like your book, and you could end up with a negative review. But you could end up with a negative review no matter who's reading your book. It's just something you need to be aware of and prepared for. So how do you recruit ARC readers? Well, this once again is going to go back towards the beginning of this podcast. This is why we're building our platform early, well before we get to this stage. You're building a social media presence. You're connecting with other people in the writing community. You're connecting with potential readers. And you're doing this a year in advance so that when the time comes that you need ARC readers, you're not scrambling. Now, I understand in some ways giving your book away for free can sound counterproductive. Obviously, you want to make money, but like we said in our segment about Amazon advertising, sometimes you have to spend money to make money. And I understand it can be frustrating. We think we write this book and all of a sudden the money's going to start pouring in. That's not the reality for most of us. You have to get your exposure. You have to get your name out there and you have to get your work out there. And to do that, the most effective way is often to give your work away for free. Now, understand that just because somebody says they'll be an ARC reader for you, they might not necessarily go out and write a review. It's inevitable that there are going to be people that do this. They say they'll ARC read, they'll write you a review, and then you never hear from them again. Take the loss and move on. Don't stress yourself out about it. I would just keep it in the back of your mind if they, in the future, volunteer to ARC read for you again. Maybe say, oh, well, this person said they would write me a review last time and they didn't, so I think I'll go ahead and pass on their request this time. What are some other ways we can get reviews? Well, what I've been doing is I've been putting my books in, we talked about this a little bit in a previous episode. You know those free little libraries, the little wooden boxes that people can put outside of their house where their neighborhood can share books and such? Consider putting a few copies in places like that for people to find them. It's not going to get you an immediate review. It might be a while before someone picks it up. But ideally, that's a future customer that you hook with that book. And if nothing else, you're doing a good deed by putting some literature out into the world, right? One thing that I will say I highly recommend against doing is paying for reviews. I can understand the temptation of why some authors end up doing this, but let me just be clear, it's extremely obvious when people do this, and it's a black mark. It really is. It's gonna stick with you. If all of a sudden on Goodreads one day, say you're averaging like 3.7 stars in your reviews, and then one day a bunch of people with really generic names pop on and give you 5-star reviews all on the same day with really generic reviews, or they don't write a review at all, they just rate it. People are going to understand what that means. They're going to understand that you went out there. We understand there are services out there you can go and pay for this kind of thing. People aren't stupid. They're going to see through this. And people that read books are definitely not stupid, so you shouldn't try to fool them. Consider hosting giveaways. I just ran one on my Instagram this week where I gave away a few signed copies. It's something where you get people engaged. Find ways to get people to interact with you when you do this. So, for example, what I did was I gave bonus entries if people just commented on the status of my Instagram photo and say what their current or most recent read was. It's a good way to start to establish connections in the community, to get to know people, and you get to give away a few books. Hopefully those people will then like that book and go write a review for you. Understand going in that reviews are incredibly important, but they're also one of the most frustrating things that an author is going to have to deal with, because such a small percentage of readers actually write them. And of course, a percentage of those are going to write bad reviews on top of it. So, isn't that a kick in the teeth? It's a struggle, but it's a struggle that you're going to have to struggle through. Try to get as many as you can. I know some authors have even done like little giveaways. For example, if you email them and show them proof that you wrote a review of their book, they'll send you something like a bookmark or a sticker in the mail. I haven't gone this route myself, but if it's something that you're interested in, look into it. Maybe it'll work for you. Try to get creative. So these are just some methods that I've explored and that I've used in terms of advertising my debut novel. What sort of methods have you used? I'd love to hear about them. Maybe try them out. So let me know in the comments down below if you have suggestions for me. Always looking for submissions to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, feedback you'd like to leave for me, check out the website, petebeal.com. It's going to be linked in the description down below. Also looking for guests for the podcast. You want to come on and talk about your book, talk about your writing process, talk about just about anything. You can do that through the website as well. I hope you found the content at least somewhat helpful today. If you did, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button. Makes a big difference, and you can hit the little red button in the corner if you'd like to subscribe and be notified of future episodes. Thinking about expanding a little bit. I'm still going to be doing the podcast every 2 weeks, but thinking about throwing some bonus content out as well. So keep an eye out for that. If you're subscribed, you won't have to keep an eye out. You'll be notified when it comes up. My debut novel, The Path of the Rahl Wielder, releases September 28th. Available for pre-sale now if you're interested in picking it up. Epic Fantasy. I'll have links down below. We're going to be back in 2 weeks with another episode of the Future So Right podcast. I'm going to be doing sort of a summary of this publishing series and just talking about my overall lessons that I've learned throughout this publishing process. That's the last episode before the book comes out. Okay, I think I've rambled on quite enough for this episode. So please, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay creative, and always keep writing. Thank you very much for listening.